So, I love architecture, and something that interests me is um, churches, like church buildings. So the architecture of them. Um, that was probably like just a terrible, terrible sentence. But so this video is about how architecture can impact our worship to God. So I'll just jump right in. Um, right now, contemporary churches are kind of in more like of a warehouse, almost like kind of a warehouse kind of setting. Like the maybe big ceilings, very flat ceilings. Like if anything, maybe the ceiling goes up just a little bit, but not like how churches. I think churches from like 80s and 90s were like kind of had the higher steeples. And there's always Catholic churches, Gothic churches, Gothic architecture, like the very long, 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 and slowly like coming all the way up, like really, really high with stained glass um, so yeah. Anyways, I like looking at and just thinking about what the shape, what the architecture of these buildings can, I guess the impact that the architecture of the buildings can have on our worship. For example, like music. If we were in like a big, big Catholic church with like went up like 30 stories and like all stained glass, you know, would you enter the Catholic church and play like Hillsong United or like a U2 concert in there or something like that?
They don't look like Presbyterians to me.
You wouldn't like amp it all out and like surround sound it and like, typically you would see that church and want to play much more classical, calm, warm, kind of like just music that makes you feel like, very calm or feel like very like just kind of like someone or something is being glorified, like a lot. That's why a lot of churches like that have choirs because it's very and has great acoustics for that too. Um, so I mean, in that sense, you would worship that way. And at the same time, would you have like a pipe organ and all these other things in like one of our warehouse kind of churches, like where it's very squarey and boxy? Like, imagine going into like a very contemporary looking church and then like, you have people playing pipe organs and violins and like, I guess it could happen. But I'm saying it's a lot less common. And I think some of the reason is architecture. And so this video doesn't have, I guess, a specific application, but maybe like if you're designing a church right now or something and the architecture, think about like how you want to, I don't know, how you want to make it. Like architecture, the way you design stuff can have a big impact on how you worship God. Again, like big cathedral stuff is going to give you like a very high, like where you have to like look up all the time. Your view of God will be very much above you. Like God is always way greater than you are. And then if you have more like the warehouse kind of churches, like kind of like a Hillsong, contemporary, whatever you want to call it, like that's going to be a much more like intimate God. Um, even some churches now I see with lower ceilings. I don't know if that's like they're doing it on purpose, but like even like the lower the ceiling, the less you're looking up, the more you're looking straight. Which means kind of like when you have a conversation with a human being, you look straight at them. Like if I'm talking to somebody, I don't go like this. Um, but in like a church, like with low ceilings and like you don't have to look up as much, you'll probably start to get that type of feel of God that's much more intimate. Just because it more represents how you would interact with a human. With humans, like in a big cathedral church, you don't look up and like talk. I mean, you know what I mean? Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. But yeah, architecture has awesome impact on how we worship, and I think it's something that should be considered when we pick like what instruments we use, when we pick like how we're designing a building, how we're like painting, anything, painting, how we set up chairs. I think all that has an impact and can like be worship to God if we're doing it out of that motive. Like if we're you know, God, I want to design a building that really reflects the mission of, you know, our church. You know what I mean? Like, I heard one church kind of was designed like as a cross, you know, and basically you enter from the back and you worship in the middle at the heart of the cross, which is awesome. Every time you go in, you know, you're like, oh man, I'm at the heart of the cross, like from a architecture standpoint. So.
Oh yeah, that's Animal. Show 'em what you do, Animal.
What do? Eat drums! No, beat drums! Beat drums! Beat drums! Beat drums!
Down, Animal.
Down!
Back. Sit.
Sit!